Let me start with Mr. Harrell. You've commented on the ongoing debate here in Congress in regards to our national debt limit. What I want to ask you is, if Congress does not move to raise the debt limit, what impact would that have specifically on our global position relative to China?
Thank you, Congressman. I think it would have at least three. First, it would clearly harm our own economic potential and weaken our economic growth this year, and a year when China probably will have reasonably strong economic growth as China comes out of COVID. Second, it is going to undermine the confidence of our allies and partners. Our allies are going to say to us, how can we count on the United States to defend our security if you're Japan or South Korea, if you can't even pay can't even guarantee you're going to pay your bills? And then it is going to undermine our economy over the long term as international investors and others look at whether they really think they have the security here in the United States that they want as they make investments internationally.
Thank you. Now, I absolutely recognize the threat that China poses to the United States from an economic and a national security lens. For us to combat these threats, I believe we need to focus on how we compete with China. Now, the United States has, and I believe in the United States, we are the greatest country this planet has ever seen, and has the innovative capacity to challenge China across various sectors, from financial services and fintech to medical technologies. But we will lose that advantage if we're not vigilant. For example, as we look at our technological and economic position, I'm particularly concerned with the speed in which China is developing its central bank digital currency, and how that could impact the future of the U.S. dollar and the security of our global financial system. So let me ask you again, Mr. Harrell, can you identify those sectors in which the United States does have the competitive advantage over China, and in what ways can we continue to strengthen that?
So, Congressman, I agree with you 100% that the core foundation of our strategy to compete with China is to continue to promote our own leadership. That's why it's so important that Congress enacted things like the CHIPS Act in order to restore our leadership in semiconductor manufacturing as well as R&D. And I think that this Congress should look at continued investments in critical technologies, whether it's semiconductors or quantum or the clean energy economy or biosciences. Also looking at investments in maintaining our leadership in areas like financial services. I think it is important that the Treasury Department have an actual plan and agenda to defend the role of the dollar in international finance, and to defend the role of U.S. financial institutions and the kind of stable role they play in maintaining international finance at a time when China is aggressively trying to push out the Chinese RMB and the Chinese central bank digital currency as mechanisms of payment and investment internationally.
So let me also then follow that up, because in competition, I believe you have to have a level playing field, and I think that a central part of our strategy with China should include the mechanisms to hold them accountable when they're not playing by the rules. So what should the United States do, along with our global partners, to make sure that China is playing by the same rules? I often worry sometimes we let China off the hook by isolating ourselves, because there's too many places where we're not present. China is present, we're not there, and thereby we end up isolating ourselves. I know, and we've got some controversial policies, whether it's gun trade and other things here, so that if we're not there, China then goes and they work with other countries to get things done, and they're trading, and we're left by ourselves, and we're isolating ourselves. So they go to. So what strategy do you think that we should utilize? And if there's time, I'd also ask the same question to Mr. Williams.
I think we need to be out in front building alliances with our economic partners. I think there are a couple of things we should be pursuing, starting with the Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership in Asia, and with the Americas Partnership for Economic Prosperity here in the Americas. I also think we should be looking at a critical minerals agreement to help ensure clean minerals supply chains. Maybe I'll leave it there and give Mr. Williams a couple of seconds.
Thank you, Congressman, and I agree with very much of what you said. We need to be in the game. I know Mr. Harrell has endorsed the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. I think we need to go further. I think we need to look at whether we can renegotiate the TPP, whether we can make it work for U.S. interests. I think we need to do a trade agreement with Taiwan that will help Taiwan reduce its dependency on China. That's the way that we provide a meaningful alternative, and I hope we can work on those issues together.
I thank the gentleman.